graphic nature of this program, listener discretion is advised.
Deviants, welcome to show. I am the Clitoris, and I am here with
the Gooch
and the Diva Crack,
and we are the Social Deviants, who are here today to talk about the beginning of the Star Wars saga, Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And what we're going to do is we're changing up the format of the show a little bit here. So what we're going to do is we're just going to talk about movies, and we are going to just break it down through different little segments that we have. And, as always, please give us some feedback and let us know what we're doing good, what we could change, what we're doing better. So let's get into it, guys.
Wait, I want to put a side note. This is the beginning for millennials, not for us. Because the beginning for us.
What do you mean? This is canonically is the beginning of the Skywalker saga.
All right, fuck that.
Which, ironically enough, I don't know if you guys noticed this, just kind of like jumping right into it. This is the beginning of the Skywalker saga, right? This is where we first meet our Anakin Skywalker. We don't see a Skywalker until 30 minutes into the movie.
Hashtag this is not my Anakin Skywalker, okay? That's what I want to say. Because Darth Vader from Empire Strikes Back is my Anakin Skywalker.
You mean your Darth Vader doesn't yell yippee when he gets off work?
My drummer's the drummer from Foghat.
Exactly.
Not like your crappy drummer.
I'm sorry, continue on, Clinton.
No, and so the movie was the movie was released in 1999 and originally was scheduled to be released on May 21st, but at the last moment they pushed it up to May 19th. And I guess the first thing I wanted to talk about, there was a ticket craze at the time. Like this movie was really anticipated, and people were trying to scalp tickets and all that stuff, which seems weird now because you can just buy everything online on Fandango and everything, and everyone has assigned seating and everything. But at the time, I was just curious what your guys' memories were of like the anticipation of the movie, trying to go to the theater to watch it, and it was really in our sweet spot of our lives. We were 18 years old when this came out.
Yeah, so for me, I remember that people would buy tickets to whatever movie was showing the trailer just to watch a trailer. And then as soon as that trailer was done, they would leave the movie. So they would pay a full ticket price just to watch this trailer. That's how crazy this was. And I also believe that this movie is kind of what kickstarted the whole Apple. Remember Apple did the QuickTime movie trailers? Yeah. I believe the Phantom Menace was one of the first times that they started to do dedicated movie trailers online in a high quality version.
Interesting. Yeah, they did say that they actually released the trailer online because it had leaked. This was one of the first times people had really done that. They had gone to seek trailers out online, which seems like okay, why wouldn't you do it? Yeah.
And did you guys ever watch TRL?
Of course.
Of course.
Duel of the Fates from this movie had its own music video that was on top of TRL, beating out Linkin Park and Limp Bizkit and J-Lo, all that stuff. A Star Wars song beat out massive pop artists. It's weird.
Do you know when that video was released? Was it before the movie came out, or was it after?
I want to say it was after the movie.
That's it.
I don't recall it before.
I can't think of a time.
I mean, I honestly don't remember because I remember I was watching TRL just to see the Fragile stuff on there. So I mean, I don't remember really because if it wasn't on there, then I just not watch it anymore. But you guys say it happened. It happened.
But it is weird to think that a music video for a movie that has the classical score. But I mean, that was popular.
That was one of the best things about this film, and very, very few things about this film are actually decent, and this is the best part. So.
Yeah, and like you said earlier, the movie was released in '99. We were all seniors in high school. I actually skipped school on the day of this movie, so I can go see it in the theater twice.
Yeah,
man.
I went to watch it with my older brother because he was a sophomore in college at the time. So, but I was a senior in high school, like you said. So I went to watch it with him, and then I went to watch it with my other friends. I think I watched it with you, Clint. I'm pretty sure.
We definitely
times,
for sure.
Yeah, and
I remember the cool thing was that I don't know if it was the year leading up to it or shortly before this movie came out, they had re-released the original trilogy in the theaters, if I'm not mistaken. I hadn't seen all those. I took
terrible remakes of the.
But to see it in the theater was something that you didn't really opportunity to do back then.
Yeah, true. Because the original ones were 77, 80, and
I mean,
83.
Jedi came out and we were we're probably still wearing diapers.
No, 83, of course. I mean, most of us. So exactly. I mean, Empire was 80. None of us were even born then. So.
To be fair, in '94 we were all still wearing diapers, but
And we're wearing a diaper right now.
So I kind of have a question for you guys. I mean, we've already talked about this offline like ad nauseum, and we all agree that the Phantom Menace is probably the weakest Star Wars movie made. So I'm curious: is what makes this movie so bad? Is it the story? Is it the acting? One thing I kind of noticed watching this movie again is that the editing is not very good.
No,
there are a couple
it's not.
times where like what's weird is that like it was actually sitting down and trying to watch this movie in like a critical sense. There are times where I can see in the movie that somebody's delivering a line, but it just feels so unauthentic that almost like who somebody took like different takes and was just like, okay, I guess that'll do, and left that one in the movie.
I mean, no, Clint and I were talking about this earlier, and we were like, not only the editing was bad, but like the directing at the same time was bad. I mean, it was really, really bad. And what were you?
I mean,
what were you saying, Clint, about how they would take the shots of like there would be like 5 people showing, but the person talking wasn't on frame. What were you? Was that what you tried to say?
Yeah, it was this weird thing where if you watch it, it's this very mechanical like way of directing it, where you have like, okay, you have these characters that are talking to each other, and they one character is speaking to the other character, or maybe there's 5 characters on the screen, and one character is speaking, then maybe another character talks, and it's like, why do you have to have all these characters on the screen, and why does the shot have to be that far away?
Yeah.
And some of the way that they move is the way that they're turning towards each other and moving is very mechanical, and it seems very deliberate. Not and you know, me and Gooch were looking at a lot of the movies that were released this year, and you can see the difference between the way that this movie is shot and directed compared to some of the movies that were being released in 1999. Can't believe that this movie, if they made this movie in the 80s, I would believe it with the way that they're directing. This doesn't seem like a 1999 film. And I think that actually contributes to some of the stiff and boardy acting performances, because what do they have to work with here? They're like, oh, I have to deliver this line, then I have to turn this way and look at this person, and then I have to wait and actually have the camera on me as the person is delivering the lines, who I don't even get to see their face, because there's like not a close-up of them. And it's just this weird way of directing it that I think is indicative of how George Lucas, you know, his directing style.
Do you think that maybe knowing that most of this movie was shot on green screen, do you think that might have had any effect, considering that like the actors, they're in this weird like anomalous space and having to create emotion and drama, but there's really nothing to work with outside of other actors who are probably, you know, at the time, I don't think that, but like, you know, I'm like, obviously green screen and blue screen has been used before, but I don't think it was used to like this extent to where, like, obviously in Attack of the Clones and obviously Revenge of the Sith, the entire movie is pretty much shot on green screen. Do you think maybe that kind of had any effect with like the sort of stoic cardboard acting that was delivered in the movie?
Absolutely. I was telling Gooch about this. I absolutely agree with that. There's just so much green screen that sometimes the characters are not even looking at the character. They're like looking above them, and they're standing too close to them. It doesn't seem realistic that they would actually be standing that close to them. And also a lot of the times when you see these like larger, like wide shots of them walking in an area where, you know,
it looks so terrible.
They look like they're floating.
It looks so bad.
It's horrible.
Like when the guys from the trade union are walking off their ship.
Oh, it's like they're floating.
It looks so
they're literally floating off the ship. It
looks really bad.
I think they overdid the green screen, but I think that's one of the things that is indicative of the time, because, you know, you had this new technology that people were really anxious to show off and to utilize, and they were just learning. It's like, you know, go back to video games. When you first get 3D games, a lot of them don't look that good, and the way that they utilize it over time gets refined. And I think that's, you know, this was one of the first times where people were trying to use it.
So I mean, I gave them a pass on the green screen because it was so new and they used so much of it. I mean, they shouldn't have used so much of it, but it was new. So I give them a pass on that, right? But that does not give them a pass on the script is bad. The acting, I give the 9-year-old kid. He's a 9-year-old kid. I mean, obviously he's gonna be bad at it, right? But everyone else was just as bad as he was. So I don't know. The green screen is a part of it, but it doesn't give a pass for the bad. Like Padme's acting is terrible. What's her face?
Oh my god!
It's
like,
so
I cannot
bad.
condone a course of action that will lead us to war.
It's just so bad.
It's so bad. I was like, oh my god.
Which
Can't
like
even believe this is Natalie Portman.
It leads me to another point in the movie where, like, watching it, it's like, okay, Naboo is this very lush society, but it's being run by a 12-year-old. Like, I don't know if I can
Elected,
trust.
nonetheless.
Yeah, I don't know if I can trust a society that's run by a kid. Like, thinking back on when I was 12, like, obviously, Padme is probably a lot more refined than I am, but back when I was 12, like, I didn't have the mindset to be able to wipe my own ass barely, let alone run an entire planet.
It was, yeah, I'm going to get to some of that stuff, and it's just so ridiculous later on. So a couple of things that I wanted to touch on before we move on to the casting, the Deviant casting director category for you guys is remember back when this movie was first being talked about, everyone was saying that like Samuel L. Jackson was like lobbying for the part and he really, really wanted it. And, doing some research, it didn't seem like he actually did that at all. He just mentioned that he would like to be in the movie, and then they approached him to be in the movie.
Yeah, because you know who was actually really trying to lobby for that part?
Tupac?
Yep.
Yeah. That's what.
Apparently, like he was a Star Wars fan, and he really wanted to be in it, and it got to the point to where he was going to be meeting with George Lucas about it, but then the shit happened and he died.
Well, unfortunately, that did happen.
Yeah. So
also, Devo, I'm pretty sure you knew this, but I don't think I knew this until I researched this. That's not Ray Park's voice in the movie.
No, that is Pete Stemmalkowitz or whatever. Yeah. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but he was what's his face? He was in Shaun of the Dead. He was the roommate. Like, it's Bit.
Oh, is it really? That's him.
Oh, yeah, really? That's him. And he's the guy in Guardians of the Galaxies where John C. Reilly is like going through the entire roster of like the Guardians and saying who they are, and then he's the guy that says, "What a bunch of a-holes."
Really?
Yeah, if you look at his face, you'll know him. But he is the voice of Darth Maul in The Phantom Menace. After that, it's all Sam Witwer.
What?
Dude, the voice of Darth Maul and Han Solo is Sam Witwer.
Oh.
Wow.
But the funny thing is they did a really good job of the dub, because I would have never guessed that it was Ray Park's voice.
Yeah.
Like, they do a really good job of that. I'll give them that.
It helps when he only has like 2 lines.
Yeah, I guess you're true. Speaking of someone who doesn't have very many lines, Keira Knightley, they were saying that she cried every day because of her wardrobe, which I thought was funny. She said it was too painful.
Okay.
But also, I was curious, how many times do we even see her in the movie without makeup on?
Without makeup?
Like at the end, I know for sure. And then there's like a scene where like Amidala is talking and she's like in the back. But rarely, right? You see Amidala without the makeup more than you see her without it, right?
Yes. So Amidala, I mean, obviously she spends a good part when she's on Tatooine without makeup on. So whenever she's out, Keira Knightley is always going to have makeup. I don't recall actually seeing Keira Knightley without any makeup on.
If you at the very end of the movie, right before they give Boss Nass that like globe or whatever, you can see her in the background. She's actually just standing there to Keira Knightley.
All right.
Okay, let's get into the Deviant cast and director. So I was curious, they were looking for a young Anakin, and 2 questions I have. Number 1, how would you feel if Haley Joel Osment was Anakin instead of this Jake Lloyd?
I mean, it could work. Haley Joel was fine in Sixth Sense. It's a little difficult
Released
for
the same
me
year.
Yeah, I don't think they could have, because he was in Sixth Sense.
And he made the wise choice, but
It's true.
the thing is, like, I don't really know. Like, for me, I can't grasp what they were trying to do with Anakin in this movie, other than show that he was at some point an innocent child, that had special abilities. Other than that, like, it was such a placeholder role that it doesn't really matter who you put in it,
Mm-hmm.
But if they could have got someone that was a better actor, it would have probably made the movie a better movie, right?
I don't think so, dude. It's the writing that was bad.
It's
The writing was terrible for him.
The way I would equate it is, like in the movies where there's a leak in a wall and you plug that leak and then 3 more pop out. You might have fixed that part with Anakin, but then it probably would have further exposed just how bad things were with Natalie. Even Ewan McGregor, Liam Neeson, like this movie, like you look at this movie, it's kind of a star-studded cast. Right, you've got Star Wars alum, and you've got brand new people to the Star Wars mythos, but no one really stands out as like, oh my gosh, that person was so badass. Like Liam Neeson does some really cool things as Qui-Gon Jinn, but it's basically just the way he fights. Like all of his lines are just god awful.
You know
Even
who actually
Qui-Gon as a character just really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, because I know originally the movie was supposed to be focused on Obi-Wan, but a little bit of an older Obi-Wan. Like Liam Neeson, he and Qui-Gon and Obi were supposed to be around the same age.
It made more sense.
Yeah, that was the original plan. That the original trilogy was the prequel trilogy was supposed to be centered around Obi-Wan and not Anakin, but they changed it. The other thing was that Anakin was supposed to potentially be 12 and not 9, like you said. What would you guys think would have happened if they would just cast Hayden Christensen?
Like right off the bat?
Yeah, he would have been 16 at the time.
It would have made continuity a little bit better. I personally like Hayden, even as Anakin. Hayden does a lot better than the 8-year-old kid who, honestly, like Jake Lloyd, my understanding is that was his first real acting role.
Yeah.
So he really had nothing to move with. And like, what did he do after that? Jingle All the Way?
Did he?
Yeah, he was in Jingle All the Way with Arnold.
How was that not your worst Arnold movie?
Yeah, I mean, like you could have put like I still stand with you could have put anybody in that role and it really wouldn't have mattered. Like,
yeah, I agree with you.
You could have made it a female. Like you could have put Natalie Portman in that role, and like even before that in The Professional, she's amazing. Like she's a good actress. But
yeah.
She's just
and
nothing
she was in
in
Heat
Star Wars.
afterwards.
Yeah.
She was in Heat too before that, and she was good in that.
I'm telling you, like I said,
Mars Attacks.
Poor writing, poor directing, and god awful editing. So I mean,
okay, so given that, let's talk a little bit about Natalie Portman. How would you feel if Keira Knightley and Natalie Portman switched roles? Do you think Keira Knightley could have done any better, or you think it's just the terrible script writing is just doomed?
I've always thought Natalie Portman was a better actress than Keira Knightley. Hands down.
Like even to this day, like there's just something about, like, at least in the roles that I've seen, I really know Keira Knightley mostly as what's her name from the Pirates movies, Domino, stuff like that. And it's like, I don't know, there's like this sort of like supermodel sort of I'm always just trying to be visible sort of thing. Like there isn't anything about her acting in those films that I saw that would make me think, oh my gosh, she can like do any better than Natalie Portman. I'm sure Keira Knightley has done some amazing roles that I've never seen, but again, that's just my narrow-mindedness in this whole area. So
yeah, I wouldn't know. I mean,
like it's tough, especially with this movie, because it's not necessarily the acting really suffers as much as the direction. Like, and another thing too is the actors have gone on to say that even in the original Star Wars that you can read what George writes, but you can't really say it. And George, like the way he writes this stuff, it's really difficult to deliver.
Yeah.
And even when they do manage to do something, like if you think about a lot of the memorable lines that we've had in Star Wars, my understanding is that most of them are ad-libbed. Like they're not the original things that George have written. So,
but isn't that part of the job of the director and to some extent the actor to collaborate on that and change the dialogue as needed?
Which is something that obviously didn't happen in the prequels.
Yeah, maybe not.
And I think the big reason why is because you look at Empire and Jedi, they weren't directed by George.
That's true. So maybe he has more of a.
So the directors had
grip.
a little bit more. Yeah. So like, because even Irving Kershner went on record to say, like, the whole I love you, I know thing, the whole sequence was supposed to be I love you too. He keeps talking about how they deliver, it just didn't feel right. Irving got so frustrated, he just let Harrison do whatever he wanted. And Harrison just said, I know. And
it's awesome.
Like, perfect.
That's sick, dude.
And that's something that we don't get in any of the prequels, because George is like, all right, I'm writing A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and we're gonna deliver it as A, B, C, D, E, F, G.
Well, even you told me, Clint, right? Like a bunch of other famous directors said no to him. So
Yeah, he wanted Ron Howard, Robert Zemeckis, Steven Spielberg. He asked all three, and all of them said it was too daunting. And I think given the fact that Ron Howard did Solo, which I really, really liked, it probably would have been best that he truly pushed to have another director, even if it wasn't one of those three, direct these films instead of him. I think that's pretty much universally agreed upon, though, to Lucas's chagrin, undoubtedly. One of the interesting things, Natalie Portman said that her mom couldn't tell Keira Knightley and Natalie Portman apart
when they were in makeup.
Yeah.
Wow.
Could you tell them apart every time they were on screen?
At first, when I didn't know that there was that whole switcheroo thing going on, I really didn't pay any mind to it. But then once they reveal that there was a decoy, I was like, oh. And then you go back and you're actually looking for it. It's kind of clear as day. Because Keira Knightley and Natalie Portman don't look anything alike. Like,
no.
Even if like Rose Byrne was supposed to be one of her decoys, which she was in, I think, Attack of the Clones.
Yes.
Like, she doesn't look anything like Natalie Portman.
No.
So do you think it was believable that was a thing?
That's like getting Vin Diesel to be a decoy for The Rock.
Well, maybe it has to be when they were making. Maybe like she'd like walk out and Natalie Portman would or Keira Knightley would walk in full makeup and like just start talking. But even they don't even talk the same. You straight up his look. I suppose.
Yeah, well, they had that terrible cardboardy accent.
That makeup, and it has to be the makeup. Like she would, like I guess Natalie Portman might walk out of the room with the makeup on, and Keira Knightley would walk in, and they're like, "Oh, of course you couldn't tell. Of course you couldn't be able to tell. It's makeup. It's meant that way."
So one of the other things is, Devo, two other things here. Apparently, Michael Jackson wanted to be Jar Jar. Did you hear about this?
I heard that. Yeah.
And apparently, they wanted Benicio del Toro to be Darth Maul originally.
Really?
Wow.
That I hadn't heard.
Those were two interesting little tidbits that I thought. And then here's the last thing for you, Devo. The Trade Federation Stooges. I forgot what their names were. Maybe you know what their names are.
Newt Gunray.
Yeah.
And Rune Taco, I think. Something like that. Anyway.
The accents.
What's going on down there?
Oh, there's two of them now. It's apparently was a Thai accent that they used.
Okay.
Do you think that is inappropriate? Like, if we made this movie now, I don't think you could really do that, right?
I mean, they're aliens.
So on the nose, but such on the nose.
Yeah, that's tough,
I mean, like,
right?
Watto's got an accent, but it's like a New Yorkish accent, but it's not quite New York accent. You know what I mean?
Right, and I think what might make Watto more okay than Newt Gunray is the fact that a New York accent is an American accent, not a non-American accent. Like you think about it, like these are alien species, right? They're not going to sound like humans. And if there's anything that like differentiates it from like the English that the humanoid race, quote unquote, and I'm doing air fingers right now, speak. I mean, it's going to have international flavor to it because that's what we're used to. So I don't know if it was maybe a sort of a hint by George saying, hey, these guys are aliens because they're Thai. But like if you go back even to the original Star Wars, Ewok language is based off of some Filipino village, stuff like that. The Jawas, same thing. There's some African tribe somewhere. So they base a lot of their alien languages on lesser known languages, and it's been used before. And I'm pretty sure even in other sci-fi movies they do stuff like that too.
Yeah.
So, I didn't know that it was a Thai dialect until you just brought it up. It obviously has that sort of Asian accent to it, and which is like I just thought it was silly more than anything else. It was hard for me to take them seriously, especially just the way that they deliver all the lines. It's just like, it seems like every time they talk about something, they're always in peril.
Yeah. It makes you like how did these guys become leaders of anything? Type thing, you know?
They
and
seem
why,
like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and why? I mean, I understand that they're easily manipulated. That's why the Emperor does it, or Palpatine does it. But dude, how did these become leaders of anything? I mean,
they seem like cowards, right?
Exactly. Even the robots are kind of like that. They're like slapstick things. Like, oh, what are you doing here? Oh, you're under
Roger.
Exactly. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. I do have a question for you though, Clint.
Yeah.
One thing that I was noticing, and it's funny, again, like I never really noticed it until it came to watching this film in a more critical fashion. Anakin and his mom are slaves, correct?
Yes.
They are slaves to Watto. When we first meet Anakin, he's working on Watto's shop. When we see Anakin again, he has the freedom to walk up and down the streets Deviants in Mos Espa. He takes his new friends away from a sandstorm to his home, and when you look at the home, there's slave quarters. But when you look at them, it's a multi-room area. Anakin has his own room. There's a kitchen. I'm assuming there's a living space. Like, it looks like it's a large living area. He's got a garage where he's able to work on a damn pod racer. And then at the same time, as a slave, Shmi has enough food to host a dinner party for all these brand new people. So my question is, if these people are slaves, what is the extent of that slavery? What makes them slave? What freedom is being taken away from them?
I mean, it's a interesting, like, philosophical question, because you have this idea of, if you work for some company and they pay you money, but the fact that they pay you the money is what allows you to sort of facilitate your life, and you can essentially do what you want. I guess the only difference between that and actual slavery is the fact that you could leave the company and go to a different one. Whereas, like, if you're a slave, you're like beholden to them. And then I think the other part of it is that if you were to have a child, that child would also be the slave of that person, right? Because
right,
so
which Anakin is.
Yeah, so I think that's probably what the difference is, because I even know, I mean, if you do a lot of historical research on, like, you know, American slavery, there were slaves that had their own quarters, that got paid, even, that could go out into the town, maybe not so much Southern slaves, but maybe like, right, you know, Northern and Midwestern slaves had more freedom. So
yeah, but they had their own quarters in the sense of, like, it was a room, right? They didn't have their own house.
I mean, some of them, I mean, they weren't nice as that, obviously, that you see in Phantom Menace, but some of them had their own houses. They had their own families and stuff like that. I mean, a lot of times they bred them, unfortunately, because they wanted to get the genes correct, the best genes with the best genes. And then you had, like, the house slaves. They just lived in the house, essentially. Maybe they had, like, a house that was, like, maybe not inside the quarter. Some of them did, some of them didn't. I mean, but they're essentially living with white people at that point. You know what I mean? So I don't think that, I mean, that didn't strike me as sort of strange. The only thing I didn't understand was, what's the mechanism to prevent them from running away? What's Watto going to do if he just decides to go?
Yeah, because Anakin, because from what we see, Anakin just goes off with Qui-Gon. Is there, like, a chip in their head? Like, are they going to, like, cross the border and, like, in Running Man, their heads are going to blow up?
I mean, this is what me and Gooch were talking about. Was like, okay, first of all, he's like, why doesn't he just take Shmi with him?
I agree. I agree.
What's the consequence? What are the Huts going to do?
Exactly.
Even if the Huts aren't going to do anything.
They'll put a bounty on them.
Well, the thing with the whole, where are they going to run away to? Unfortunately, it's like Tatooine is a planet that survives off of farming, like the mist, the vapor.
So they're not moisture. They're moisture.
They're not going to survive out in the desert. So they're pretty much stuck in that city. And anyone that probably, you know, will try to help them will probably get hunted by the Hutt. So it's
but when Tall, Dark, and Handsome with a laser sword starts rolling up, and he's winning the freedom of your son, he's winning pod races left and right, and he's got his hand on your shoulder. It's probably the first time she's felt a man in a while.
I totally agree. That's a huge plot hole. I don't understand why he doesn't take it with her. I agree with you. I'm just saying, prior to that,
Devo.
I mean, that's like, why didn't they just leave and go out in the desert? Like, why? They're gonna die.
I mean,
I know your question, like, Clint. I know what you're gonna ask, and Qui-Gon and Shmi did not bang.
No, but if this wasn't, like, so geared towards kids in real life, behind the scenes, he would have, right?
No,
they wouldn't. It's a Jedi thing. They wouldn't.
Yeah,
but still.
I mean,
as
Dark
a
Man would have done it.
Darkman.
What is it? Rob? What is his name? Rob Roy. What was
Rob
that?
Roy?
The
Scottish.
The
Scottish guy. Yeah.
Now hold on. Is Shmi
the
guy
hot,
from
though?
Taken? Yeah.
The guy from Taken. He would have done it. Yeah.
Is Shmi hot though, Devo? Is she hot?
Are you attracted to her? Is that what you're asking?
I don't have an opinion either way. Strangely.
I mean, she was dressed up as a slave, so she had like she was just wearing a potato sack.
See what Clint he said that's like he's like, she's good looking for Qui-Gon. I think they make a handsome couple for Qui-Gon.
Yeah, for Qui-Gon.
Yeah, for Qui-Gon. Not for me.
You know, in the Clone Wars, you know, Obi-Wan kind of explores a relationship of sorts. Or
see, that's what I'm saying.
Romance for a little bit. And, like, even Anakin says, like, in Attack of the Clones, he's like, he says some bullshit line about how, like, you could say Jedis are meant to love or whatever. So he's just trying to get the panties to drop. But I think Qui-Gon is more of that monk state that the Jedi are supposed to be. Like, you look at Yoda, Mace Windu, like, they are all about that Jedi order, you know? And I think Qui-Gon was like that. until he met Anakin, and then he was like, yo, this is the dude that's going to take us to that next level. We need to get him on board. And then when he got all the dissidents from the rest of the council, then he's like, I'm going to go do my own thing.
And that's why he would have gone attack. What's your face?
Yeah, he would have gone right. He would have gone right back to Tatooine. Like, yo, I gotta go pick up my lady. Her head's not gonna blow up. There's gonna be no consequences.
Yeah, he should have, dude.
He should have, because I was telling Gooch, you know what ended up happening to her? She basically got married off to some guy with no legs, and then got captured by a bunch of Tusken Raiders and raped.
Well, to be fair, he bought her, and then he freed her, and then he lost his leg because he went to go try to save her.
Okay.
And then she got raped by a bunch of Tusken Raiders.
Hey, man, they do what they do.
Yeah. They do what they do. They definitely do what they do. Now, let's get into Shmi, when there was a scene in the movie where obviously one of the most famous infamous scenes where Qui-Gon is testing Anakin for the midichlorians. And he says, like, there's a 20,000 midichlorian count. Even Yoda has like 12,000 or something like that. And Shmi is over this, and she look. And now we know why. Can you talk about that?
So apparently there is a Darth Vader comic, and in this comic they kind of, I don't know if it's actually true or if it's just something that kind of Anakin is putting in his own mind, but he's going on like this sort of introvert sort of exploration of his past life and what brought him to the point of getting all of his limbs cut off and falling so deep into the dark side. And through these visions, he learns that Palpatine had somehow kind of meddled and used the midichlorians to create life and twisted this life to be his dark servant. When Shmi says that there was no father, I was just pregnant, even in Revenge of the Sith, Palpatine talks about how he learned a power to cheat death, and that you can even manipulate the midichlorians to create life. Like, he gives this look to Anakin like, yeah, I know how to create life. And he looks at Anakin like, I created you. So somebody caught onto that and tied that into this comic. So, like, as of right now, there's sort of this ongoing debate that Palpatine is the one that created Anakin.
Wow.
What's your emotional feelings on that?
I don't like it.
Yeah, that sounds terrible.
I mean, for me, like, I like the idea of this dark force, like, no pun intended, this dark force rising, and that the force itself was able to determine that there was this dark power coming, but the force couldn't balance it itself. So the force had to create something. If Anakin wasn't, like, born from a mother and a father, and the force actually came out and created it, like, it wasn't these midichlorian things, but it was the force, because it's this living thing that binds everything together, created the balance. But what I love is the idea that the force creates that balance, but that balance got corrupted and turned to the dark side and destroyed most of the light. But that doesn't happen now because we think, or we assume, that this balance was created by the dark side to begin with.
Well, I mean, I was going to ask you about this. There's one thing where he mentions, like, first of all, Qui-Gon says it's conceived by the midichlorians. So this is actually saying, no, it's conceived by Sidious using the midichlorians. But there is, Mace has said, you're referring to the prophecy of the one who will bring balance to the Force. I was under the impression that actually the balance to the Force was brought by Luke, and Luke was the one. Like, the prophecy was wrong. Like, they were wrong. It wasn't Anakin. It was going to be Luke. Luke is the one that brought balance to the Force by, like, killing Sidious and killing Vader and whatever.
Yeah, so, and even Yoda says in Attack of the Clones, like, the prophecy mistold could have been.
Yeah.
Fuck. Yeah. Why did I deliver that like Yoda?
Because you're awesome.
I mean, the whole thing was that if you guys, I mean, he really did bring balance to the Force. So there was so many more, light users light Force users, I guess, the Force, the light side of the Force users compared to the dark side. And he literally destroyed everyone until the only two that were left were Yoda and Obi-Wan, and then there was Darth Vader and Palpatine. So if you think about it, they did bring balance to the Force. There's only two. I mean, obviously there was others that may have been Force users or like they're like slightly Force users, but the people that were really strong in the Force, technically, there was only two left, two on both sides. So they did bring balance to the Force. Fortunately, it wasn't the prophecy that that you so eloquently spoke, like Yoda said. It kind of backfired on them, but it did bring balance to the Force. It was 2 on 2.
Yep, I agree.
All right, let's talk about this. Let's talk about the script doctor. Let's get script doctor, deviant script doctor here. Let's say, okay, so I just want to point out a couple things that made me laugh. So first of all, there's a scene where Sebulba is getting ready to go to make the race, and there's like these two hot Twi'leks that are like massaging him. That was funny to me. I loved it.
I love that he's feeling him up too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny that that's in the movie though. You know what I mean? But Star Wars has always had those kind of like real life kind of underseedy stuff just in the background, you know? I like the two-headed announcer. It's really cool. Gooch was actually saying it, the voice is a guy.
Yeah,
What were you
Greg
saying,
Proops.
Yeah, Brooks is from Whose
Whose line is it anyway?
Yeah.
There's a chick in Leia's outfit when Jabba first comes out to the pod race.
Oh, the slave outfit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. I wonder if it's the same actual outfit or they just made another one.
It just might be the look that Jabba likes, dude.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of which,
It's like
did
a
anybody
trophy
else?
slave.
Yeah, was anybody else kind of like horned up that there was a lady hut there?
See, this is what I was curious about. Now, there's a female hut there, but I thought Jabba found human women attractive.
Maybe he does, but he also has a son, and he doesn't have a son with a human. So that kind of brought
It's
my
true.
question: is what are the hut reproductive practices?
I
You think they lay eggs?
no,
Because
I
don't know.
I remember
Like-
Jabba's son in the Clone Wars. And
Like
he's
I'm
a
just
little
like
slug.
how do worms reproduce?
Are they asexual?
I think
I
they
don't know.
are. Well, not worms, but like slugs. Slugs are asexual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
They
but
have
like
both
obviously
males and
there's
females.
male and female huts, so there has to be some sort of like somebody's got to drop an egg, somebody's
I
got to
know-
seed it.
I know
Now whether or not that's external or internal,
I know snails lay eggs. They have like little snail eggs.
and
I'm
what I want to
assuming-
see
They could be
is
egg laying.
I want to see one of those, you know, like we've already had Star Wars, like the Star Wars porn parody. I kind of want to see a Jabba the Hutt and whatever the lady Hutt's name was, and like have a porn parody of that.
Oh my god.
That's gross.
Hey Devo, I have
Yeah.
to ask you a question. You know how in Star Trek there's a bunch of like interspecies beings and
Yeah.
interspecies relationships? Are there any like half species people in Star Wars?
Not main characters. I don't know if there might be like in terms of like humanoids, I think there might be some half and halves, but there's not like, you're not going to find a half Wookiee, half human.
Oh, they're just not
it'll be like
compatible?
It'll be like in Star Trek, right? So the Star Trek B'Elanna Torres, she's half human, half Klingon. You're gonna find things like that. You know,
So
you're
a
not gonna
Wookiee
find.
can't procreate with a human then.
Well, I don't know. Can you have a baby with a dog?
I hope I don't know.
Right, but
don't
that's the
know.
question. That's the question, right? Like it's that sort of different. You know, just because Chewbacca's bipedal, I don't think you could have a baby with him. Maybe you could try, but
I mean,
I don't think it's gonna happen.
And in Star Trek, there's a specific reason why they have babies with Klingons, but I mean that's a whole different reason. But they're all seeded from the same genetic goo. That's why they can do it. But
Devo, let's talk about Willow. Warwick Davis. He's in the movie.
Twice.
Yes, and the character that he plays, the Weasel character, that's just like him. He is also in Solo, and it's the same character.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting.
And so I'm assuming that that's like what would you think? It's like maybe 20 years later, 30 years later, Solo.
no way.
Yeah. Well, yeah, because
Hence Solo is only. Is
I mean,
30
I
years
looked it up.
old.
Warwick Davis
at-
was 30. Made that movie.
right, but we're talking
20
Star
when
Wars
they
time,
made
right?
Willow.
So
He was
at
30 when
that
they made
time,
this.
right? But at that time, Anakin's what, 8?
Yeah.
And then when he becomes Darth
9.
Vader, he's supposed to be what? Oh, so he's 9. And when he becomes Darth Vader, he's supposed to be 19, 20 at that point. And then Rogue One,
He's 20 in Revenge of the Sith. Jesus,
he's 19 or 20.
I thought he was like older, like in his mid 20s.
So the canon is wrong then. So they're not actually 30 years old. So Han Solo's not 30 years old, and Leia's not 18 at the time. At New Hope.
In a New Hope, yes. But what I'm trying to figure out the timing of it all, because Revenge of the Sith, Luke.
Han Solo's like maybe 25 in
Luke is-
Solo.
Hold on, let me look. I want to look this up real quick. I want
Because
to find out when.
Because if that's the case, so I mean, if they're born, so they were born at the end of Attack of the Clones. No,
Revenge of the Sith.
Revenge of the Sith. If that's 18 years before New Hope, that means Han Solo was 12 during that time.
Phantom
I mean,
Menace
the
or
timeline's
so.
all muddled up. I mean, I really don't know. I mean, I have to watch Han Solo, I guess.
All right, so Solo is definitely after Revenge of the Sith.
Oh, obviously, it has to be.
Revenge of the Sith is 19 years before New Hope.
What?
Yeah, because Luke is born, and Luke is 18, 19 in A New Hope.
Yeah.
So he's a lot older than Luke and Leia.
Yeah, we just
He's
have
like
to
10 years older than them.
find out.
If he's 12 years older than them at the end of New Hope, I mean at New Hope, right? Because he's supposed to be 30 then. If he's already, how old is Han Solo in the movie?
So reading here in a Star Wars novelization, it doesn't say what novel. The closest that we get to Han's age is that somebody says he couldn't have been more than 10 years older than Luke.
Yeah. Oh,
So-
it's been like 12 years old. He's like 12 years older than Luke.
So he'd be 12-ish around A New Hope, and the Empire is already well in effect. So this has to land at least halfway between Revenge and A New Hope.
Yeah, that's what I would say. Because I don't. Like I said, I don't know the new canon. I know the old canon. The old canon was that he was actually trained, but he was like a trained Imperial fighter or like a pilot.
Yeah.
That was the old canon. I don't know about the new canon, obviously.
No, it is. He is. In the movie, he's an
He's
Imperial
Yeah,
soldier.
he's just a trained Imperial pilot.
Yeah.
Who obviously, changes his ways. I mean, he was 12 years older than Luke and Leia at New Hope. So he was 30. He was supposed to be 30 at New Hope. That gives you, 12 years to work with? If he was 24.
Okay, so that character is not that much older. That character would be the Warwick Davis character would be in his 40s or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. There's a lot of Easter eggs like the Warwick Davis. There's ETs in the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would be curious to see what that species. What's the name of that species?
I don't think it's ever revealed.
Yeah, I don't know.
They're just ETs, I guess, or whatever. But it would be pretty
Yeah.
cool if I thought that was cool. You know what I mean? That's the one thing about this movie that you have that is not in some of the newer movies. The like heavy Easter egg stuff is in this movie. Like a lot of the connections and stuff like that, which I thought was cool. I was curious, you know how we talked about how this prequel trilogy was originally supposed to be about Obi-Wan? What do you think would have happened if, let's just say, they never trained Anakin? What do you think Sidious would have done? Because he definitely would have known. He knew about him by then.
So Sidious obviously was trying to get a second in command until Anakin was ready to become Darth Vader. So he found Darth Maul, he trained up Darth Maul, he got Darth Maul ready. Darth Maul unfortunately died, so Sidious had to do an audible. And that's when he went after Count Dooku. I think that even if Count Dooku failed, which he did ultimately, Sidious is the kind of manipulator, the planner, the conniver, that he would find the appropriate, he would find somebody to kind of be that role. What was so special about Anakin? I think that Anakin was supposed to be like this sort of pure sense of evil, and then when Obi-Wan bested him and he lost all his limbs and he became the Darth Vader we all know, that lessened his ability in the Force. And even in the comics, like there's a whole comic series with Darth Vader where the Emperor is always trying to replace essentially Anakin, because now he's essentially a robot, and his abilities in the Force seem to have diminished. So even though that Darth Vader is like a badass in the Force and he's like this completely evil and powerful character, he was supposed to be much stronger when he was completely human. Even in like some of the video, like the Force Unleashed, like there's times where like the Emperor he just treats Vader like garbage. In the movies, we make it seem like Vader and the Emperor work hand in hand, but the Emperor is always testing Vader and always trying to replace him, but Anakin just finds a way to make it happen.
Well, even in Return of the Jedi, like Vader himself says that he and Luke could kill him easily. Like Vader just needed some like a trigger to get rid of the Emperor. You can from that point you can always tell. But going back to it, I think the Emperor taking Anakin as a underling. I mean, like say if that would never happen, we would still have the Emperor. And it would not have stopped, because ultimately Anakin killed him. With no Anakin there, he would have still be here.
Yeah.
So there would literally be, I don't think anything would have changed. It might have taken the Emperor a little bit longer to do what he did. But I think ultimately, if there was no Luke, no Anakin, that means there would be no Luke, and then there would be nothing that happened. I mean, they were already creating the Death Star.
Yep.
That means that with no Luke, the Death Star would have been created, and literally it would have terrorized the universe. So him taking Anakin under, or them finding Anakin ultimately did bring balance the Force. So there is no Jedi at all. So it comes back down to that. So I honestly think they'd be worse off if they would have never trained Anakin.
So let me talk to you guys before we finish off this segment, and ask you guys about a couple different things about the story itself. So the first thing is there, you remember the final battle? You're like describing what they're gonna do. They need to get the Trade Federation stooges, and they need to get a hold of them, and then they can take that, and then they can take down the whatever and shut down the droids and all this stuff like that. And essentially what happens is what they needed to do, right? So there's two parts of it. The first one is that they do a poor job of like giving visual exposition to let you know what the goal is and like what the stakes are. All they do is just talk about it. They don't do like some sort of like holographic visualization of it, or some like where they're like explaining to you what they want to do, like a Guy Ritchie type thing where they explain to you what they want to do as they're showing them doing it type of thing. So you can actually kind of see, and it makes it really hard, especially when you're young, to try to follow like what they're supposed to actually be doing. You know, do you guys get that same idea? Like as an adult, I understand it now, and I've watched it multiple times. And I'm thinking back to the first times I saw it, I was like, I don't think I knew that this is what they were saying and what they meant when I was first watching this.
Yeah, in a sense, because it's like I feel like, especially in the prequels, there's so much that they're trying to explain and trying to share in sort of like a short amount of time, because from Phantom Menace to Attack of the Clones, there was 10 years, and then there's only a year after Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith. So within that time frame, you're trying to cram all of this mythos, because you know the next step is going to be A New Hope. So I feel like there's just a lot of like, we're just going to imply that this stuff is happening, and not really go into depth and show you what's happening, because our main focus is Anakin and showing you that he was a good person, showing you why he became a bad person, and showing you all the bad things that he did to become Darth Vader.
I'm pretty sure like my young self was so disgusted about how they changed the Force from something mystical type of thing as the Force was supposed to like this mythical, it's like magical type thing, so just some bacteria that's in your blood. Some space battle was probably a nice respite from that garbage. So I'm pretty sure I didn't notice. I'm like, even now it's like, I'm like, it doesn't make any sense, but like the whole movie doesn't make any sense. So yeah. So it's like, well, just add more to the pile of shit that the movie is. You know?
Well, because like we know that there's a blockade by the Trade Federation on this planet, but like, why?
Enough. Exactly. Why is it there? True, I agree. Why is it there? But it's all, at the time I just figured it was a bigger plot by the Emperor. But it just, the whole thing with the midichlorians, it boggled my mind then, and it boggled my mind now. It was just so disgusting, that whole thing. And,
you're traumatized.
I was traumatized. I watched the movie like 3 or 4 times. I remember when it was released, but just because like I wanted to see it with my friends. But every single time I watched it, I remember this is the stupidest thing I've ever seen. I'm like, how could I understand that? Oh, there's more time to tell stories. Honestly, there probably wasn't, because that movie was garbage. The story was all garbage. It was all jumbled. It was so bad. I really didn't notice what you were saying. I'm like, I knew that they needed to destroy a ship, like some ship, like every other Star Wars they needed to do it. I figured that was going to be in it. Yeah,
like you have to have a space battle, right?
Yeah, you have to have a space battle that you destroy some big piece of shit. Either a planet or it's not a moon. It's a space station type thing. And this one was no different. I expected it from it. What really bothered me was that some 9-year-old kid did it.
Well, that's another thing.
And all he really did was just spin.
Yeah, he did spin, and then he crashed into something. It was like, all right, well, whatever.
That was another problem that I had with the movie, was the incidental damage that was being doled out by Jar Jar and Anakin in the climactic battle that just seemed so convenient. And it was just, when you're watching it back as an adult, it just seems so ridiculous, so stupid.
Dude, it seemed ridiculous back when we were teenagers. So it's obviously it was made for children,
which I never got because they released these movies like 20 years, the original ones 20 years before this movie. Who'd you think was the target audience?
It was children. It was they wanted a brand.
But that's the point. It shouldn't have been children. It should have been everyone that grew up watching
the original Star Wars fans.
I totally agree with you,
and I think that's what they did right with Force Awakens compared to this one.
I agree. Force Awakens was pretty good.
Which interestingly, I thought that it was interesting that this movie, A New Hope, and Force Awakens all have scenes on Tatooine, and I don't know why that is. Like,
Force Awakens does not take place on Tatooine.
No, that's what it's called. Jakku.
Oh,
it looks exactly like Tatooine.
Yeah,
I mean,
well, because they have. I mean, but like in Star Wars, you have your archetype planets. You have a sand planet, you have an ice planet, you have a forest planet, and you have an ocean planet, essentially, right? So in Force Awakens, they had their sand and their ice planet, and then in A New Hope.
They had a jungle planet too.
I'm not A New Hope. Yeah, they had a jungle planet, and then in Last Jedi, they had it took place mostly in space. Then there's the small island, and then a salt planet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you had your swamp planet would be the little where the fish people are, where Luke is. I would call that like a swampy planet.
Yeah.
And then you had your big city planet, which was the stupid gambling planet. And then you had your salt planet, which was the desert planet.
Stupid gambling planet, he says.
It doesn't make any sense. Oh, forget about it. He's all right.
Okay. We talked about it.
What do you mean? It was a casino.
Dude, that whole scene is unnecessary.
So one thing I thought that the film did good, it did really good, was at the very end. They had like right before they had the you fool. Right before they had the final like celebration, there was like they were like kind of wrapping up what had happened in the wake of the battle.
Yeah,
and they were like showing like
the Sith have come back, but who did we kill? Did we kill the Master or the Apprentice?
It's really good how they set it up.
Yeah,
and they pan off to Palpatine. It's really good how they set up the next couple movies at the end of this movie. I'll give them credit for that.
The best storytelling in the Phantom Menace, right there.
Yeah, I agree.
So I think we all agree the script is beyond repair.
It's garbage. Basura.
So let's go.
Basura.
So now we've talked about a terrible script. Let's talk about let's introduce our inaugural Kim Coppola Award for the worst acting in this movie.
Yes.
Let's go with this. First candidate would be Jake Lloyd. Unfortunately, take it easy on him, but he was particularly bad. The next candidate, Natalie Portman, cardboard acting, and then I guess you have to put Ahmed Best in there. Although I don't really blame him that much because what was he working with?
I would argue that Ahmed Best is one of the better actors in that movie.
It's weird, right?
Because
given what he had to work with, he did a good job.
Because he's the only
he did physical acting too.
Yeah, so he's the only person that is a physical actor doing a CG job. Oh, actually, that might not be true, but he's in the movie quite a lot. He has to deliver. He's the slapstick comedy, so he's got to deliver these weird, quirky lines. And he's got to do something that really hasn't been totally done before, like be a physical actor and just be completely CG'd over. But when you look at all Gungans, they're sort of just like these dopey, mopey, like the guy Shaggy from Scooby-Doo, like they're like all like they're just a bunch of morons, and he just had to be this goofy sort of thing, and like he did it well. He was very animated. He got the voice down. He created this character, and then he was received very poorly, so his role diminished obviously as the movies went on. But I dare I say Ahmed Best is probably one of the better actors in that movie, because you look at like his deliveries and stuff, he's not doing cardboard acting. He's doing over the top acting, but it's not like, well, these are 1,000 midichlorians. He's got the best. He's got more than Yoda. Or oh no, Master, the hyperdrive is destroyed. We've got to get a new one.
I have to agree with Devo here. I mean, you got to give. If there's two actors you give passes to, you give passes to Jake Lloyd, and you give passes to the guy that was Jar Jar Binks. Because I mean, Jake Lloyd obviously was 9 years old, thrown to the freaking sharks with a terrible script. This kid's never acted before. And what the fuck did you expect?
Like you got to look at the major players, right? Jake Lloyd, like
whatever.
His first job, he nearly committed suicide because of it.
Yeah, exactly.
But you got to look at Natalie. You got.
He almost committed suicide.
Yeah.
Yeah. Apparently,
times,
like he got bullied so much in school, it drove him crazy.
Yeah.
So you got to look at Natalie. You got to look at Ewan, and you got to look at Liam.
Yeah.
So who you? So you think it's Natalie?
For me, my Kim Coppola award goes to Natalie Portman.
Yeah, me too.
She's so bad. The scenes with her and Anakin are particularly painful
terrible
to watch.
Yeah,
they're so bad.
Ewan and Liam at least express more emotion, and they're portraying monks. Like there's not supposed to be a whole lot. Like my idea, at least that my personal idea of like the whole monk Jedi sort of thing is like. They're not going to be telling jokes. They're not going to be like living things lightly. Like they're guardians. They're sort of like a police state, quote unquote. So you're not going to expect a whole lot from them. But you've got an empathetic queen of a planet who's supposed to show, like I said, empathy and remorse and all that stuff. Like show emotion to her people. She just had such terrible lines that she had to spit out.
Yeah.
And you could have put a cardboard stand up there with voiceover and you would have had probably a better performance.
I have to agree. Dude, at least, with Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, they had some decent banter. It was only when Qui-Gon was talking some serious stuff is when it's like so bad. When Liam is talking some serious stuff, it's so bad. Same thing with Ewan, dude.
Yeah.
When they're talking about like science and stuff or anything other than when they're like talking to each other, it's very, very bad.
And there's a nice little exchange between Obi-Wan and Anakin that I really liked when they first meet. And when they're running the ship and Darth Maul attacks them, and then they all hop on the ship. Qui-Gon's like, Obi-Wan Kenobi, meet Anakin Skywalker, and then Anakin's like, oh my gosh, you're another Jedi, pleased to meet you. And it's just like he's so happy to meet him, only knowing that in the future he's going to be the one that kills Obi-Wan Kenobi.
Yeah. I thought that was like Jake Lloyd's best moment of acting. Honestly,
I agree.
In the movie, that was like actually pretty. I felt real. What was funny too about the Natalie Portman thing is, I guess this isn't her fault because it's just terrible script writing. But she kept talking about my people are dying. My people are dying. I'm like, what people? They never showed it. They never showed a Naboo person dying ever.
Yeah, no, they showed
they never gave
her.
The stakes.
They showed people in her palace being held at gunpoint by robots. But they didn't show anybody being like mistreated. They didn't show anybody, like you said,
they didn't even show
anybody
the
dying.
soldiers.
I think the only time we see people actually dying is when Natalie Portman, like Queen Amidala and the Jedi, break out fights. Then people start getting shot at, and like her troops start dying, and people start crashing in the planes and stuff. Like, but before that, and the big battle out in Naboo, that's all between Gungans. Like, she doesn't care about them, right? So, who's dying?
Yeah, it was very weird. So we'll give the award to Natalie Portman.
All right, Natalie, congratulations.
I agree, dude. That's
So okay, let me. I have some. It's just so ridiculous. Takes. Now the first one is, they say that they're going to leave the Gungan Palace and go through the core of Naboo to the other side, the antipodal point of the planet, and through the core. Now, that was like an Earth-like planet, Naboo. Like, how would they have a water liquid core? It's not even physically, scientifically possible.
I have no idea.
It was so stupid.
Unless that sub is like protected for molten lava at the same time.
Like, there was no molten lava. It didn't even make sense. It was
they also didn't show him go through the core. They just showed him like escape some giant fish and then go into a cave, and then all of a sudden they're
so terrible,
in the
dude.
boot,
They came up on the other side of the planet, for Christ's sake.
There's always a bigger fish.
Oh God.
Another thing that kind of bugged me is Anakin, when he's like, I had a dream I was a Jedi, and then I'd come back and free the slaves. He comes back to save his mom, but does he actually go back to free the slaves?
Could care less.
He could care less, dude.
And I think that also kind of ties into like, what is the extent of the slavery, right? Like, can they just not leave the planet? Like, I don't know.
Honestly,
that bugged the crap out of me.
The only time you see true slavery is when Chewie frees all the slaves at that mining outpost in Solo.
Yeah, I don't think there's any other extent of slavery.
Well, I don't
mean,
know.
technically, you could say this: the droids are slaves of the Jawas.
No,
Well, they
They'll have
did say
restraining
that
bolts.
slavery was outlawed
when Jabba
by the Empire.
Oh, Jabba's got the chick on the
Jabba's
chain.
got the chick in the chain. He throws her. She throws her at the Rancor.
Yeah, but I mean, that's
Yeah,
like
'cause
one
he's-
person.
Oh, dude, that all
Still a
those
slave.
all those other people, like all those dancing girls, are probably his slaves, dude.
Yeah,
Okay,
the chick
granted.
with the 6 boobies.
Yeah, that's probably his slave.
The Hutts they're gangsters.
The gangsters.
Okay, another one is right when after R2 like saves their ship and they get away, they like present R2 and they say like, this is what happened and this droid did this thing, and it's like Keira Knightley standing there as the queen, and she says, Padme, why don't you go clean this droid? And I'm like, wait a second, what? You're telling me the queen is gonna agree to her decoy's order to clean a droid? She's a fucking
Yeah.
queen. She ain't cleaning a droid.
While they're talking about important things that the queen should probably be there to
It's
at least be
preposterous.
like
Well, that's
listen in on.
ridiculous.
It's bonkers.
That was so stupid.
It's bonkers.
The midichlorian thing is to me the most outrageous
But
part
the
of the movie.
weird thing is that they panned in the next scene and she's
Yeah.
actually doing it.
Yes.
She's
yeah?
in a room
Happily.
alone with R2 and Jar Jar, and then she starts, making conversation with Jar Jar while she's cleaning a droid. Like, what? Why? Like, why didn't she just go to like another room and just be like, okay, like I'm gonna listen in on like the holocam or something like that? No, she actually does the job, like the handmaiden job. Like, it's like, okay.
I mean, the only thing that I could think could be like the argument for it is that she wanted to go to Mos Espa, as it was, and she wanted to she was curious about the planet, so maybe she was the type of person that was like that. You know what I mean? Not like a royal elite type. Although she did actually seem like a royal elite type in the subsequent movies, but nevertheless,
She magically knew how to fight in part 2.
yeah.
She's like a badass like warrior.
So another thing that I thought, okay, you know how when we're watching the, like when they take Anakin in front of the Jedi Council, there's this like nonchalance, this arrogance to them. Did you guys get that feeling? I got that at least from the Jedi Council.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, why are you bringing this boy in front of us? And then, like,
Yeah.
even when they do the test, like the way that Sam Jackson delivers it, he's just like, nah, he's too young or he's too old. Like, no, we're just not even like he might be the
Yeah.
chosen one, but fuck him.
Yeah, and I thought that there's this recurring theme that a lot of the downfall of some of these people is like their arrogance, their cockiness, and
No, they were right though, right?
They were right.
They probably should have just like done away with them right there.
yeah, they were right. They were definitely right.
Yeah,
Yoda
like
should-
Yoda's like,
probably
hey, there's a
should
lot of
force
fear in
them.
you. You're gonna be a bad guy. Let's
Yeah.
throw you in the brig.
If they would have been smart, they would have all thrown their lightsabers at him and
You
chopped
just
him
killed
up
them
to
right there.
pieces. Yeah.
Gooch. You're
It's the
chopping up a
truth.
9-year-old boy to pieces.
They were absolutely right. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like I said earlier, I think it would have been ultimately their downfall either way, but at least they would have been betrayed by one of their own. Well, as far as we know, but still.
So I had this. I agree with you, Gooch. It's like you can't stop fate, but speaking of the duel of the fates, in that battle, I mean, we've talked about this before many times off of the podcast, but like essentially Darth Maul dies because he was cocky, because he basically had Obi-Wan dead to rights, and he got cocky and allowed Obi-Wan to jump over him and slice him in half. And like this idea that that the Jedi got cocky, that's why they were susceptible to Sidious, and that's how he was able to protect, mask the fact that he was present. And also Darth Maul got cocky, and it's like, I feel like that's too much of they use that maybe too much. Do you guys feel like, or do you think it seems reasonable because we're still all humans or people, I guess?
I felt, after like the third movie, I felt a little bit too much. Like every woman's too cocky. I'm like, all right, fine, fuck. But I don't know. I think the things with the Jedi Council, they were actually right for the being cocky. Darth Maul was paid for his cockiness is fine because he was a cocky motherfucker. No, rightfully so. I mean, he was a badass. What can you do? Right. The rest, I mean, it can be said the whole thing. I'm like, ultimately, the Emperor, really thought that he had control on. He was being cocky about his control over Darth Vader. You know.
Yeah,
Ultimately, it didn't.
It's a little bit easier to see it from short bursts in like 2.5 hour episodes, but I like when you think about it, like living that kind of life for so long, having that kind of power, like at some point I think you're going to lose focus. And,
I agree, yeah.
And then all of a sudden, like it was obvious with Maul. Even Count Dooku kind of got so swept up in his power, didn't realize that he was going to get played by Sidious, because he knew that Sidious was Palpatine, and that Palpatine, used Darth Maul, was trying to turn Anakin, used Asajj Ventress, at some point as a minion, and like for some reason had the hubris to think that he wasn't going to get turned on. And then like when he orders Anakin to kill him, he's like, "What? Why would you do such a thing?" I just think it's one of those things where you just get so much power that at some point you lose sight of everything, and you kind of only focus on the fact that you have that power. Like to quote a fantastic movie, with great power comes great responsibility. You just lose that responsibility for a little bit, and then it bites you in the ass. In this case, it's your head comes off, or you get thrown down the shaft of a Death Star.
Because I mean, a lot of the major baddies in this saga, they die that way. Snoke dies that way. Palpatine dies that way. Darth Maul dies that way. It's just, I don't know. I get it. I don't know. I just wish there was something slightly different, something a little more.
And you brought up Snoke. That's a perfect example, because he was so cocky and confident in his power, and he even says he's like I cannot be betrayed. He's like, I can see into his mind, and he's twisting his lightsaber to point it at his enemy, and it's like, but I think at that point Kylo Ren knew the control that Snoke had over him, so he knew how to play him, which he ultimately does, and boom, he's donezo.
Yeah. Well, okay. So the last thing that I thought was ridiculous about the movie, and Gooch were talking about this earlier, the pod race. What are the rules? Because these dudes are just trying to kill each other essentially. And I'm sorry, like if I survive and so Boba tried to kill me, I'm gonna kill him. I'm gonna go to his house. I'm gonna find who he is. I'm gonna kill him. Because the fool tried to kill me in the pod race. Like, isn't that what like actual NASCAR drivers do? They like get out of the car and like try to punch each other if they like crash each other. So I'm like,
so I actually have some stats on this. In that Boonta Eve Classic, there was one casualty. That one dude who flew into the stalagmite.
The pillar, yeah.
And he blew up, so he dead. There's one guy that crashed. I forgot who it was, but he's actually MIA. Nobody's been able to find him. And then there was one dude who's Arigis. They're the ones that have like the 3 eyeballs. And he crashed. Sebulba crashed him, and apparently in well, it's legend, it's not canon, but apparently he actually hires Jango Fett to go after Sebulba, and Jango Fett actually kills some of Sebulba's family for that crash.
I don't blame him. See, that's why I like that. That answered my question perfectly, because that makes perfect sense to me. Like, if the guy's going to do that to me, I'm sorry, I got to kill you. I got to kill you. You try to kill me.
I mean, like that, but like again, like that, like that's the thing is they say that. So here's what's weird about that. Like Qui-Gon, when he learns that Anakin can race a pod, he's like, oh, they have pod racing in Malastare. It's very fast, very dangerous. Like he makes it sound like the speed is what makes it dangerous, not the fact that everybody's trying to run you off the damn road. And then even still, at least I don't know how it was on Malastare, but in Tatooine, like. You go across, you go around one bend, and there's Tusken Raiders trying to take pot shots at you. So it's like, not only do you have to worry about dudes trying to crash you into the side or crash you into whatever, you got people trying to blast at you too.
That was a good scene, by the way, when they were like the first.
Yeah, it was.
And like the Tusken Raiders were like hella proud of themselves. They're like, oh,
dude, the like pod race is actually pretty good and rewatchable.
That was actually a decent.
It's pretty good, actually.
I was gonna say that, yeah.
I think it's one of the greatest scenes in Star Wars.
Yeah, I mean, other than
I wouldn't go that far.
I don't think
good scene.
No, it is. It actually is. I think it's the second best scene in the movie. The first one is the Duel of the Fates, of course, obviously.
Oh,
which
in
was
the movie? Okay,
yeah.
The lightsaber.
Yeah,
but no, like even in all of Star Wars, it's like it's one of the most unique because there's no other races in Star Wars other than maybe like the speeder bike in Return of the Jedi, and that's just a technological marvel. This one it's unique because you got this crazy race. There's a lot of it's Anakin's freedom is essentially on the line, and I thought it was just animated very well. It wasn't shot well because obviously it wasn't real. It was all CG.
But actually, the funny thing is that when Anakin's in the racer and they show his face, it actually looks like he's there. They did a good job, actually.
Yeah, no, like I mean, obviously they did that. But one thing that I thought was crazy too is at one point, like somebody runs into him and like one of his engines like disconnects and he's like spinning around and around and around. Like as an 8-year-old boy, like how do you not like just lose your mind?
Dude, he's strong with the Force. Well,
like,
that's the only thing he can do. Remember, he pulls out like
he's strong
a magnetic pipe, and to pull a little dangling wire or the.
I know, as an 8-year-old going on the Vortex at Great America doing loop-de-loops, I was just like, oh my gosh, I hope I don't fall out. But this little kid is like fixing his. He's fixing his. Man, I'm such garbage.
Yeah, you have 0 midichlorians. You probably have negative midichlorians, bro.
I have as many midichlorians as I am Italian. There you go.
That's the truth, man.
Okay. So, do you guys think that? By the way, the Duel of the Fates battle, there's a little spot where Maul is attacking Obi-Wan after Qui-Gon dies, and Obi-Wan has the lightsaber raised up over his head and it's covering his back, and then he just moves it forward towards his chest and like blocks both attacks. I thought that was dope. It's just one of the coolest things that they've ever done in a lightsaber battle.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that also kind of just shows how badass Obi-Wan is.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so do you guys think that they should? So let's. Do you think they should remake this movie? Do you think they should have even made it? What do you think actually happens if they don't make it? If they didn't make this movie?
That's kind of a difficult question because this whole exploration of Anakin was always a part of the Star Wars lore per George Lucas. So I think at some point this story would have come out in some way. Whether or not you make it a movie, maybe you do a comic book, maybe you do a book, I don't know. But I think that this story, it's part of the Skywalker saga. It is the journey of Anakin Skywalker to become Darth Vader, and then we take over as Luke Skywalker. And then I feel that episodes 7, 8, 9 are going to be about a different Skywalker. I don't think those movies are about Luke or Leia. They're about a different Skywalker that we don't know about yet. So, I think these movies. I'm happy these movies are made. They're not the best movies. They're not the best Star Wars movies, but they're movies I watch over and over. They're movies I do enjoy. I am a huge Star Wars nerd, so I find all the greatness in this stuff, even if there's few and far between. But would I want this movie remade? No. I personally do not want any of these Star Wars movies remade. I wouldn't mind maybe see a reimagining and maybe a short animated series, or maybe a retelling in a comic or a book or something. But in terms of like film itself, these movies need to just stay where they're at. You don't touch the originals at all. Unless you're George Lucas and you do special editions. Maybe they could do special editions of the prequels, maybe like cut some things out or change some things, or, maybe add some filler to make things make more sense. But these prequels, just leave them alone, leave the originals alone. We're going to leave the sequels alone. It's fine the way it is. It serves its purpose to deliver us Darth Vader. It wasn't done as elegantly as it should have been, but it is what it is, For
me, I don't think they should be remade. I knew these were George Lucas's like ideas from the very beginning. He actually wanted to start with these, but they were technologically unable to back in the day. So that's what they had to do the Luke ones, right? My real problem was that they negated all the I always, if you listen to our old podcast, they negated all the stuff that I read throughout all the books. Just one movie negated everything. All the cool stuff that was in the canon at one point is now smooth. It's garbage. That doesn't exist. And my problem is that there was like supposed to be like some council that allowed these books to be canon. And apparently George Lucas wasn't part of it, I guess, but it was like a Lucasfilms thing, right? And I really hated it that why didn't he just say no, that's not going to be canon back when these books were first written, instead of just throwing them out the window all at once.
Well, because I think at the time he didn't.
That was my problem.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like,
and honestly, it's always been my problem. I was probably just as big a nerd as you, Devo, but I stopped being a Star Wars nerd because of it. I love Star Wars.
Yeah, and that's tough too, because like when he made the originals, and they start coming out with all these comics and all these books and stuff, and he's like, yeah, sure, that's fine. Like, I don't think he really I don't think George personally signed off on him. I think it was like the probably. Lucasfilm collective that was like, this is part of the story. This is part. We're continuing these characters. I don't think George at the time thought that he could go back and be like, hey, now I can make the story that I wanted to make. It wasn't until he did the special editions in '94 to where he's like, okay, I can go back and like now. Because he even, like, that was the whole thing about the special editions, is that he goes back and he adds the stuff that he originally envisioned for those movies,
but which
a lot of us think made it worse. But now he's like, well, now I can go back and do what I really wanted.
But he's got to understand that, like, the fandom, these books and these like stories are part of the reason why Star Wars is still so strong. Because I mean, they were great stories.
Yeah, and he took all that money to make the Phantom Menace.
He took all the money to make the Phantom Menace. And don't be wrong, I think there's some of the stories are some of the characters coming back because they were so popular, but they were just they're characters that are being retold in different ways. And I don't know. Like I said, I'm a Star Wars. I like Star Wars, but at one point I was a huge fan. Now, because of these films, it always will remind me that it was the reason why I stopped being a Star Wars fanatic. So for me, it's always a bittersweet, not even a bittersweet, just a bitter flavor in my mouth. So
yeah, I mean, it's the jizz in your mouth. I always just kind of view these as
because sometimes jizz tastes different. This will always be bad. It's like shit in your mouth.
Well, you would know. So
exactly.
What would you think would happen if none of these movies got made and we only at this point had just the original 3 movies?
They were going to be made. They were going to be made. There's too much money.
Well, but assuming that they weren't, like, I think we would just get a continuation of an exploration in book form, there have been so many books that have explored Skywalker and even his lineage past when he dies, there's not a whole lot that kind of and there's not a whole lot that goes on before that. I mean, we get that in Knights of the Old Republic. I think that still happens even without the Phantom Menace, so there's the Force Unleashed. I think that can still happen without the Phantom Menace. I think there's a lot of stuff that can happen.
Honestly, the whole story between with Kylo Ren and all of them, it's just so much more intricate in the old canon than it is now. It's just so much better. But
I agree with that.
So I mean, him and Mara Jade actually get together, and it's a great story. That whole thing's a great story. Yeah. But like I said, I mean, all of it, there's nothing. Forget it. Why even bring it up? It don't make it matter anymore.
Jason and Jane and all that stuff.
And exactly. It doesn't even
matter. And I think that it just continues on because when you look at the EU before Phantom Menace comes out, it was very, very diverse, and it just expanded the Star Wars universe tenfold. And I think it would have just continued down that path and just go in different directions. Like, the whole Death Troopers thing, the Star Wars zombies still probably would have happened. And I don't think it would have slowed down or anything, but
I would like to say this. If I would still think there'd be movies. I think if George Lucas was involved, the Phantom Menace would be made. If George Lucas wasn't involved, then a better movie would be made. Let's just say that.
And like maybe they would have explored stuff after Skywalker instead of going back to the past, you know? So
ideal video game adaptation would be for this movie. Like a pod racing type game, a Jedi Outcast type of game. I mean, I know they made it. And
There was a
that,
podcast arcade game. There was the
we already had Pod Racer.
Yeah.
They had the arcade version was awesome because they actually had the pod that you sat in, and the controls were the two like little stick things.
To play too.
Yeah. They had a PC adaptation of this game, which was weird because when you play as Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan, like they have rocket launchers, and they don't like Jedi don't use guns, so that was kind of weird. But I think I would like to see, honestly, like I am.
There was a lot of games here.
Yeah, I'm such an old school gamer. I would love to see a Jedi Power Battles style game that focused just on the Phantom Menace storyline. Although that's kind of what Jedi Power Battles was.
I'm looking at it right now. Jedi Power Battles 1 is Star Wars Episode 1. So it's like based on what happened in Part 1.
If Jedi Power Battles wasn't so difficult, like that would be the kind of game that I want, because you got to explore the levels of the Phantom Menace as different Jedi. And that's the Jedi are really the things that we love, right?
It looks like there was a PS1 game that was based. It's like a little open world or story driven game that was Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. It looks like you're playing as Obi-Wan. You just walk around.
You play as there's an Obi-Wan game for Xbox.
This thing is called Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. That's all it's called.
Yeah, so I played that for the PC. You play as Obi-Wan, you play as Qui-Gon, you can play as Amidala, or you can play as Captain Panaka. I think there's even a pod race scene in there, but it's an overhead. It looks a lot like the old Grand Theft Autos. It's not a good game at all.
Yeah, I think it has a 4.2.
Yeah. Captain Panaka is the brother that's like her like general or something like that.
Yeah.
That
the
guy,
captain of her security. I
would say that guy for what he had to work with put through a pretty good performance. Like every time he has to say something, you're like, oh, okay. Is like the least cardboard actor of all of them.
Yeah,
I give him credit for that. And speaking of that, he had one of my favorite quote in the whole movie.
The Hutts are gangsters.
Yeah, he goes when they're saying like, let's go to Tatooine. He's like, you can't take her there. The Hutts are gangsters. I was like, it's just great. It's just great the way he says it. A couple other good quotes that I found, and you guys can chime in with some of yours. The movie, the first line that Obi-Wan speaks in the movie is the line that gets repeated a bunch in A New Hope, which is "I've got a bad feeling about this." And I think they might even go back to it. I think someone says "I've got a good feeling about this" at one point.
That's Han Solo in the Solo movie.
Yeah. And then he does say that, and then
and that's the only time he says. That's the only time somebody says, "I've got a good feeling about this."
Yeah. And it went badly, of course. But and then there's a line where Qui-Gon says, "Just because you speak does not make you intelligent. Now get out of here." I wish to Jar Jar. I wish he would have listened. We wouldn't have Jar Jar in the movie, but nevertheless,
that reminds me of the line in Willow when he says, "Get out of the way, Peck."
Yeah. Although Qui-Gon says it a little bit nicer.
Yeah.
Peck. There's another line which I wanted to know what you guys how you guys interpreted this line. When Qui-Gon first tells Obi-Wan that about Anakin, like indirectly, he says, "Why do I get the feeling that we just picked up another pathetic life form?" Like, why does he use that insulting language?
I don't know.
It's very strange.
Yeah, because maybe he's got so much detest for Jar Jar, and he's like, all right, we left the Trade Federation, we land on this planet, we get this just piece of shit, and now we go to another planet, and like we've got somebody else. Like, oh my god, it's going to be another asshole.
But the interesting thing was that at the very beginning, when they first land on Tatooine, they're like, I sense a disturbance in the Force, or whatever they said, right? And Obi-Wan's like, I felt it too. So Obi-Wan had to know that this was the result of that feeling, right? So why would he say pathetic life form? It seems strange to me.
I don't.
Well, I think
Is this just
they're-
bad
they're-
script
they're-
writing by
I know,
George Lucas?
Well, from what I understand is like I think it's because it's like the feeling is ambiguous. It's like they feel it, but they don't know where it's coming from. Or it's like, it was like a slight thing type thing.
I think they're actually referring to the Queen because I think they're starting to pick up on the fact that the Queen is being coy about things, and then even when they're walking to Mos Espa and Panaka comes on, he's like, "The Queen wishes your handmaid to come with her," and I think it's a reference to that. I don't think it's a reference to any sort of like feelings of the Force or anything.
So you don't even think they were when he says that he's talking about Anakin at all?
I personally don't.
I don't think so. Yeah.
Oh, see, I 100% thought it was Anakin.
Because it's not until Anakin starts talking about like being able to pod race and stuff like that, to where like Qui-Gon's like, oh well, he's got very fast reflexes. It's a Jedi trait. Like, it's not until then where he acknowledges.
Yeah, but he did the midichlorian count thing before that, though, right?
I don't remember. Man,
I think
just
he did.
watching this movie, you know,
And he actually had to call Obi-Wan to give him to do the analysis.
Yeah,
so
you know,
I thought it was, but nevertheless,
this movie did put me on such an emotional roller coaster. Like, I started off with the emotion of being awake, and then I went to the emotion of falling asleep. So I probably missed that part on the second watch.
no problem. Let's not put each other to sleep, and let's finish it off with our last recommendation for Star Wars Episode 1: The Phantom Menace.
Finish me off,
How deviant worthy do you guys deem this movie? I have my opinion. I'll let you guys go first.
I mean, I like you guys have said, I'm a huge Star Wars nerd. To me, this is every Star Wars movie is a staple of Star Wars, even the Hollywood special or the holiday special. I recommend the holiday special to people. I would recommend this movie. You know, do you have to like? I think the big question for me is what order you watch the Star Wars movies in. I personally have a playlist of everything in chronological order from the dates they occur. So that's one of my big goals, to kind of watch everything in that sort of order.
For me, to someone that's never watched Star Wars, I suppose I just tell them to start here. Because unfortunately, what I would tell them is that it inevitably gets better. I mean,
But they might not get through this one.
Well, that's what I would
Might
tell them.
sour
Like,
their
I would
taste, their
just,
palate.
I would just warn them about like
The cardboard acting, the terrible
90s,
script.
the 90s Star Wars are bad. I mean, at first, especially the first one.
Yeah, you could be like, it doesn't get any worse.
Yeah, I mean, it gets a lot better. I would tell her. I mean, I would tell her, tell him. Usually it's chicks, so that's what I tell her. But I would tell them, it just take a couple of drinks, just watch this first one. Even the second movie's a lot better than the first one. I mean, because the first one's just a pile of garbage.
Yeah, but we all agreed that the second movie was the second worst movie
Of
behind
three.
this one. Yeah, no, in the whole of all of them.
Oh, I changed it. I think this the latest one is the second one. Worst movie.
Oh, you thought? Oh, okay, interesting.
I wouldn't. I don't really care too much for whatever
Last
what was it
Jedi?
called? The Last Jedi. I mean, I'll watch it over this any day. I mean, this was a piece of shit.
I'd rather watch
but-
Last Jedi than Attack of the Clones, but hey.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about that?
Go ahead.
Like I said, the problem is I have such a hate for this movie because of what it did to everything else of me. I would have a hard time ever even telling. I was like people are surprised that I'm a Star Wars. I actually like Star Wars, to be honest with you, because I never bring it up. I never. I'm like, and then like, oh, you know a lot about Star Wars, which I'm like. I mean, at one point I was a big fan. I mean, and then Phantom Menace happened, and then they go, oh, what's that?
The midichlorians happened.
The midichlorians happened. And I was like, wow. So and it comes down to that. I'm like, you watch it. It's at your own risk.
I definitely, for me, I wouldn't recommend someone start watching Star Wars that doesn't know anything about it with this movie. I'm not necessarily saying I would recommend like A New Hope, like everyone says. At this point, if someone's like young
definitely
and
not
never
New Hope.
saw it, I would probably recommend like Force Awakens, probably to start off with that. But I think that I think you should only watch this movie if you're trying to embark on watching the full saga. Otherwise, I think you can probably just watch like Duel of the Fates and like a couple other scenes and kind of just read about it, and then you're probably ready for Attack of the Clones. I don't think it's as necessary as some of the other ones. The problem is like it's not as nuanced as some of the other movies. The only cool thing is if you watch the other movies and then you watch this one, there's like a ton of cool Easter eggs in the movie that'll like you'll get your rocks off on just seeing that stuff. You know what I mean?
I'll agree with that.
But if it's the first one you've seen, you'll just watch over it. You won't be able to get it. Maybe you'll get the ET part, but you won't get all the other little, homages that this movie has. And I think that's the thing that Star Wars: The Force Awakens does a little bit better, is it has those homages, but it doesn't like. The movie is still like a good movie overall, It doesn't spend too much time with that. And there's like a lot of stuff in this movie that is like painful to watch. Like for one, there's like a scene where like Jar Jar hears like smells some animal farting. It's like, why does that even need to be in the movie? It's so stupid.
I wrote that down. It's the first fart joke in Star Wars.
Yeah. So yeah, that is our recommendation to you deviants out there that have never seen
Phantom Menace.
Well, you guys are deviants, so I'm sure you guys are going to sit down just to as masochists.
Yeah, you can't watch there.
If you're a true deviant and you want to watch a Star Wars movie, watch Attack of the Clones, because towards the end you get to see Natalie Portman with hard nipples.
And also, I went back to see the other chick that was in the slave outfit. I would pause it there. She's actually pretty hot. I mean, she has her hair's
what
kind of messed up.
What about the chick that was like standing on the pod race thing with the red pants?
The female Hut.
Well, no. Some like white skinned chick with a mohawk.
Yeah, like she was like there was like this chick, like a guard chick, and she had nice booty. I mean, I don't know if it was CG or not, but that was nice booty.
I don't remember her.
You gotta watch the pod race
like
again.
Fraction
like
of a second.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, that's Aura Singh.
Is that who that was? Because she looked familiar. Like she's in Clone Wars, right?
No. So that's Aura Singh. She's mentioned in Solo. Tobias Beckett's actually the one that kills her. She's a bounty hunter that if I remember correctly, she had some sort of relationship with either.
She's not in the show.
She's not in the.
Cartoon?
She is because they have a little sequence where she kind of takes in Boba Fett, because I think she had a relationship with Jango at some point or something like that. But she's a bounty hunter. So yeah.
Do you guys have any parting shots for the Deviants, or are we gonna end it there?
I think we should end it.
I'm good on the Phantom Menace. I'm glad that we all agreed on the Kim Coppola award. It's very interesting to kind of rewatch this movie in more of a critical way. So I'm really excited to go back and review some of the older movies that I've already seen a billion times, and just kind of see them under a different light.
Well, thank you, Deviants. Until next time.